designing the long-running format, challenges of the web writing universe. It's such a self-explanatory topic that I will not dwell further on it. I'll leave the panelists and the moderator to do that. However, let me welcome Datta Dave, the co-founder of Tulsi, who's going to moderate the panel, please. He's a strategic media and content management company which represents and advises various entities, including leading creative talent production companies in gaming and animation and media startups. Over to you, Durga.
Thank you. How's everyone? Good? Excellent. We will try and have a little bit of fun while also trying to be educational. I'm going to quickly introduce our panelists. We have Aparna Purohit, who is the creative head of Amazon Studios here in India. And Mr. Vikram Malhotra, who is the CEO and founder of Abundancia Entertainment. I'm going to quickly tell you a little bit about my colleagues here, and we'll then tee it off and ask some questions. Aparna is been with Amazon for almost a couple of years now. Before that, just a little less than 2 years. Before that, she was actually involved in running the Sundance Mahindra Screenwriters Lab, extremely involved in development, extremely supportive of creative talent, so a great person to have with us here today. Vikram has run Balaji Motion Pictures, he's run Viacom Motion Pictures, and then went out on his own and started Abundancia Entertainment, which is focusing on motion pictures as well as episodic content. I'm going to quickly just ask you guys to share a couple of things, just to get to know you guys a little bit. What is your favorite long-running series currently? What is a series that you love that has hooked you, and why has it hooked you?
Inside Edge, of course. No questions. But other than that, Man in the High Castle on Amazon. It's fabulous writing, and it really created a world which is fascinating, and I really like the way the conflicts play out in that, and films are such an important part of that show. I absolutely love that show.
Awesome. Vikram?
Inside Edge, of course.
Of course.
It's an Amazon show. Our show is on Amazon as well. The plug ends here. Really, you know, the format is such that it's very difficult to pick a favorite but a favorite or something that I really liked over the years. Breaking Bad, X-Files of the old, recent watches, Bosch on Amazon. But I really pick up something that I'm in the mind frame for at that point in time.
Understood. You know, it's really interesting because there's been this a lot of talk in the media about how everything's about short-form content, and what I really find kind of interesting, almost ironic, is yet we binge and we'll watch for 10, 15, 20 hours on a weekend, and both of you guys have obviously had very successful careers in the motion picture space. So I'm curious to understand, what made you, obviously you guys have still involved in the motion picture space, but Aparna, why make the switch? And you know, most of your time is now dedicated to series. What excited you about the series, and how did you end up here?
So I'd say that this is an extremely liberating medium. It's liberating both for the customers as well as for the creators. One filmmaker who's working with us, who's developing a very interesting series with us, said something very beautiful. He said, it liberates feature film directors from the weekend mafia that exists. Because you know, you're no longer trapped with the box office numbers. Your content can really breathe, it can get time. What I find exciting, particularly about this medium, is how it gives you the opportunity to really explore nuances, complexities, conflicts, which you can't do in 2 hours of a feature. It's interesting how no character is just sitting on the fence or just makes an entry and exit. Everyone has a story, everyone's got flesh and meat. There's an A story, and equally important is a B story, and there's a C story. I find that extremely exciting. And the other thing is that you can tell stories that you always want to tell, and you can't tell it either on in television or in films. That is what I find extremely exciting.
Now Vikram, you've produced large-scale Akshay Kumar films, you've supported great indie cinema like LSD and Gangs of Wasseypur. Why not just keep doing that? What made you say, let's focus a little bit more on episodic?
Well, there's nothing wrong in continuing to support progressive and entertaining large format feature film content, but in our understanding, in something that I've personally looked at in the last 7 or 8 years in the business, we like going 2 steps ahead of where the market is, and every sign a few years ago pointed in this direction, not because we wanted to do it, or because writers and directors wanted to do it, or platforms were coming up, but that's where the audience moved to. That's where the consumer moved to. So, while there will always be the large screen spectacle that will exist, it's adapt or die now. If you do not move into this liberating medium as creators, if you do not move into this liberating medium as platforms, as distributors of content, the consumers are already there. So they will watch, they will consume, they will pay for what they feel is relevant there. So I guess for us it was also at Abundancia a natural progression with the kind of work that we were doing, because we were creating content for younger audiences, more liberal-minded, progressive thinking audiences, and like I said, it's a logical extension of that philosophy. So while there is a balance, we continue to maintain a very strong feature film slate. There is a clear bias going ahead on long-form content.
Just a quick show of hands, and we're curious, just given the work that we do, Aparna being, working at Amazon, platform and the distributor, Vikram being a producer, Tulsi being a talent agency. Show of hands, how many folks in the audience are writers? Okay, large majority. Directors? And producers? Financiers? No one, all right. Great, great. There's been this trend, when we look at things in the West, of how many, kids are going to film school, and instead of going into the motion picture space, they're deliberately choosing to work in television, whether it's linear television or the digital space. So it's quite a new phenomenon here, right? I think that when you joined Amazon, 21 months ago, we were talking about what's it going to shape up, and since then, in the past 18 months, Amazon's actually greenlit, put into development or production 18 shows, maybe more than since then. Talk to us a little bit about that experience. Coming in and just very early stages. What sort of content were you receiving? What did you sort of start saying, like, this is how maybe I should start identifying content? What should writers be thinking about, when they're coming to a company like Amazon to pitch something?
Right. About 2 years ago when I joined Amazon, the times were different, I can say, because these were pre-Inside Edge times, and people didn't really have an idea of what it is that we were trying to create. So I'd get a lot of pitches every day, but most of those were repurposed film scripts. Most of those were shows that one of the broadcasters hadn't approved and they were coming to us. Some of those were great ideas, but there was no real story. Some were great premise, but really no story. So it's taken us a while, because this is a new beast. Nobody really knew this, and we also learned along the way. But what was heartening was that all kinds of stories were coming to us. These were not formulaic. These were not stories which had a recipe attached to it. These were stories that couldn't have been told on any other platform. And when we started sifting through these ideas and when these pitches started coming to us, what we were looking for were character-based dramas. Stories where characters really become a part of your life. They really come and start interacting with you. We were looking at stories that had conflicts, that were pushing the envelope, that were, much as it sounds, abused, but stories that were really clutter-breaking and really pushing the envelope in many ways. I'm very happy to share that we are perhaps the only company that's investing very heavily in development, because we really believe that this is the writer's medium. This is a collaborative medium. No longer, a screenwriter needs to work in his solitary cell typing away to glory. This is a medium where you have to set up a writer's room, where you need a showrunner, and you need to heavily invest in development, and that's what we're doing.
Lovely. Vikram, on your end, obviously you receive a lot of pitches for motion pictures and series, as this space, started opening up. and Abundancia decided to make a go at it. What did you think about in terms of the kinds of pictures you're getting, and what were the things that were coming towards you, and how did you start sifting through what was episodic versus motion pictures?
So, taking on from what Aparna just mentioned, this is the classic category creation. This was blue sky for everybody, for talent, for producers, for post-production companies, for artists, the anchors of this format, writers, directors. Words like showrunners, bibles, pitch decks, these didn't exist in our vocabulary. I remember having an early discussion with the Amazon global team, and they explained an elaborate process to us. And the leader of that discussion then said that, so what's your concept on this? I said, concept, we haven't thought about this ever in our industry. So it started from that scratch. I think it's opening up. We face a lot of legacy mindset issues. In fact, at some point in time now, when we talk about the challenges, especially for the writers and what we experience, I think the biggest concern that we have as producers is that we get faced with, or a lot of pitches continue to come from that legacy mindset, from the feature film mindset, from the linear TV mindset. Then there are some perspective issues like because it's digital and it's online, let's put out profanity there, let's talk about skin and language, and that seems to be the go-to place for a lot of development. That's rapidly changing. So 18 to 24 months ago, this was the dominant part of what was coming our way. Now it's rapidly changing. Or you had people who would come to us and say, "ये बिल्कुल Game of Thrones जैसा है." Right? And आप ये बना लो, this will become House of Cards. So even before we had international maturity and platforms come into the system, you knew that this really isn't what is going to be sustainable or even something that you could look at. Changing rapidly, but there's still a lot more that needs to be done.
I think both of you guys hit on something that's very dear to me, which is the writing and the showrunner. I don't know, is everyone in the audience familiar with the showrunner and the concept of a showrunner? Yes? Okay. So it's really often spoken about as a writer's medium, and I think it's one of the most exciting times because in a motion picture, we'd always say, well, you can put some good-looking faces in it and add some music, and you can get by in 2 hours, but
not really.
But with it happens. But with a series, you just can't, right? And with a series, you're really trying to sustain an audience over 10 to 15 hours and get them hooked. Talk to us a little bit about that. Talk to us a little bit about the current state of writing in the industry, and how you're finding writers adapting from the from the short form content to motion pictures to now to series. How are you guiding them as a producer, Vikram? How are you coaching them as a platform operator?
I personally think, and to put this into principled action, I think there are 3 kinds of challenges that we face as a market, as writers, as producers who engage with writers. The first, which I touched upon, are legacy challenges. We have 100 years of feature films behind us. We have 30 years of active conventional television behind us. And because our market has traditionally been a very sort of lowest common denominator, one-size-fits-all kind of feature film, and dare I say the television side is tending to get a little more regressive. It's working, so can't complain for the broadcasters, but it's getting a little more regressive, it's getting a little more into the sort of mythological and folklore kind of space. So our writers, a lot of them have seen that around them. That legacy mindset prevents from getting into what works in this format on these platforms. The second is the audience challenge. We suddenly have a world where all of us, including pretty much everybody sitting in this room, we are behaving like teenagers, right? The conventional teen, low attention span, easy to get distracted, very judgmental, very frugal and fickle with money. We are all behaving like teenagers. Look at how we jump from one show to another. Look at how we talk about these things. the challenge to get into this fickle mindset as a writer, and leading into the third challenge, which to me is a vision challenge, where we are talking an episode, a show. You face this a lot, we've spoken about it earlier, where people are not talking about what's the vision, what's a 3-year arc for this, what's the ability to tell this story, but it's more about, are we looking only at hooks, are we looking only at cliffhangers, are we looking at, big name director or writer. So these three things, legacy, audience and vision, I think are the key tenets, if I may, for good writers and good writing to emerge out of our country.
I think Vikram's really hit the nail on the head, but in addition to that, the landscape is also changing because there is a lot more involvement of the studio now. So, the kind of things that we're asking of the writers is new to them. So we are asking for a Bible which encapsulates what the large season arc is, every episode, detailing out every character. There are script notes that go back and forth from studio. No longer can, are we okay listening to, we'll manage it during the shoot or the edit. We need to see it managed on paper first. We insist on getting all scripts before anybody gets on to the shooting floor. We are encouraging writers to look at not just this season, but how it can move into, season on season on season, because we want to create properties that can have legs to go into several seasons. So I think it's a paradigm shift at that level that we're asking for, really.
Great. Aparna, I've seen you, and I know Vikram, you've also seen this in Aparna. She's a great supporter of talent. But you also work at Amazon, and it's obviously a very large data-driven company. So as an executive there, you have to balance your instinct, your creative instinct, with data. How do you balance the two? How do you sort of say, okay, well, my gut's telling me this, maybe the data's telling me something else. How do you sort of reconcile the two?
You're right, Amazon is an extremely data and process-driven company, and I feel at the end, data gives you insights. It gives you great insights on what are the genres that are working, for which demographic. Episode 4, cliffhanger, really worked. Those are the kind of details that really help you. But at the end, it's really the gut. It is really the story and the passion of the storyteller that makes us make the decision about, taking on that show.
Excellent. I have a few more minutes before we open it up to questions. I want to talk a little bit about the star system in the entertainment business. We see in the West, stars represent about 20% of budget. So if a film is made for about $100 million, a star gets paid about 20 million. Over here, a film is made for 100 crores, and the star often gets paid 50 to 60 crores, 50 to 60%. A lot of the excitement that I've seen, at least in the town we represent, is hey, here's this medium that doesn't necessarily going to rely on stars, because the distribution challenges that exist in motion pictures don't necessarily exist in an Amazon or other platforms. How, having worked in systems where it's extremely star-driven to now where it's ideally, theoretically more democratized, what are you seeing in this space as a platform? How important is a star? It's highly competitive, right? You're challenged to get eyeballs. You have so many platforms coming up. So when you're looking at a show, is it, hey, can we package this with a star? Is that it's a nice to have, it's okay to have? Is it ultimately just about the writing? Talk to us a little bit about that.
So I'd say that we look at people who are creating as well as people who are acting as stars. So it's not just people who are in front of camera, are the stars for us. We have really seasoned directors who are working with us and making really big shows with absolutely new actors, but absolutely correct for those characters. And we have new directors and we've padded them up with seasoned actors or really known faces. At the end of it, we really want to go for what is best for the story. And this is a medium that allows for that.
Vikram, any thoughts on that?
Again, it's coming from the audience. They're looking at characters, they're looking at stories, they're not swayed by the faces that are in front of the camera. And it's that factor which is driving the medium, and this not just in India, but also globally. And and as long as that continues to sustain, you're going to see a huge impact of that on the feature film business as well, where audience tastes will mature enough to understand, and they're already happening all around us. Look at 2017 and 16 successes in the feature side. Already people are willing to buy tickets for stories which may not necessarily feature the biggest of stars. So it's happening all around us actually.
And we absolutely agree. I mean, we're constantly telling our writing talent to just focus on story and just focus on being original. Moving forward, I think before we jump to questions, last thing, we're 24, fast forward 24 months, 36 months. Where is this industry in terms of episodic content? What are some of the things that you're expecting, hoping? What are some of the things you're concerned about that you hope sort of sort themselves out? I'll start with you.
I think it's going to be the most exciting time. There will be a lot more Amazon shows, including one with Abundancia, that will be out by then. I think there will be so much choice, both for the customers as well as for the storytellers. And hopefully that will make the customers more discerning, and therefore the creators more, it'll make customers give more reward to the storytellers. And I think it will be the most liberating time 24 months down the line.
Awesome.
Business-wise, India is not an or market, India is an and market. So we are going to see feature films, conventional television and digital and web coexist. I think the real opening of the watergates, or the floodgates, will be if we are able to increase the size of the market, which is currently defined as digital and web, and start getting the belly, which is linear television, and that share coming in. To me, that change would drive everything. Suddenly you're going to see more investment, way more investment than exists today in talent, in infrastructure, developing that talent, work that people like you are doing. And more consumers willing to pay for that content. Because until that comes in and becomes the new mainstream, we will continue to operate on a certain fringe. So I'm very bullish that that's the next 36 months for us.
Great. What do you guys think? Questions? Yeah? Is there someone with a microphone going around? There we go.
Yeah, very good afternoon, big panel. My question is, traditionally we have grown up watching Doordarshan, which had serial soap of 13 episodes, to channels which were 1,000 plus. So as of now, is there any standard definition from your studio perspective? What may be the number of episodes will be relevant for the web series kind? And second one, you talked about brief about demographic and other statistical tool. So apart from smartphone users, which are the tools you go through for your target audience to get into the web series? Thank you. For both.
Hi. So on the first question, we are looking at anywhere between 8 to 12 episodes for one season. And after that, if the story continues, it goes into another season. It could be either a half hour or it could be a 1 hour. So it's either anywhere between 25 to 30 minutes or 45 minutes and above. That's a 1 hour. About the second question on data, unfortunately I'm not at the liberty to share how we collate our data or what are the various means to get the data, but Amazon is the most data-driven company.
I agree with the last part.
Next question? If we can just limit to one question, please direct your question to someone.
Can you give us some of the data? Like you said, there's two things you said. One is that there's a genre that works best in India. What would that be? And what hooks work best? What hooks work best in India? You said you're watching and you're like, this is the genre that works best. What genre works best in India?
And what is the second question?
And there are certain hooks or like cliffhangers. What was, in India, what was the #1 cliffhanger ever?
Interesting. I would say these are very early days for us to really say which genre works the best on digital. We've just come out with one original which has worked phenomenally well for us. But we also have a lot of comedy content on our service, and that has worked phenomenally well for us. We have 14 stand-up specials. We are also coming out with a lot more comedy. That's worked very well. But having said that, we are developing shows in pretty much every genre. These are very early days for us, and that also is a segue to the second question. Very difficult for us to say which hook works the best, because the hook that works for you the best may not work for me. But as long as the audience keeps coming back to watch the next and the next and the next episode after that, you know, the series works for us.
Over there in the... Yeah, that's good.
Hi. Let's come to the commercial part. Okay, as a producer, we know what to expect for an episode of a TV series or a film. What is your expectation about the time to reach the ROI for an episode or series?
I'll let the producer answer
I
that.
think that's a hard question to answer because it depends on the platform, right? Different platforms will look at monetization in different manners.
Yeah, but when they are selecting the topic, the content, right? So they have certain data. The more interesting because people are talking about data. And when we are now looking at this particular option, it has to be data-driven. We need to have more visibility about it, as you guys have. So, can you share any data about how you have made in the research series?
You know, each show and therefore each episode will pretty much command its own budget. This is somewhat akin to that legacy thinking that I was talking about earlier in another context, and I don't mean your legacy thinking, I think you raised a valid point. We've, as producers, been attuned or been told by the market to think saying 10 lakh rupees on TV per episode is a great budget, or 15 lakh rupees is a great budget. You are suddenly, sir, in a universe where $10 million is the budget of an episode of a show that somebody is making somewhere. So, there's no right answer to this. No data will be able to say that there's a certain ROI point beyond which will work or not. I mean, haven't we heard of $100 million green lights of certain networks being pulled out because they tanked? So you're not going to get a per episode budget answer, I think, now or in the future. It's going to be the story and the vision that's going to demand it.
I just want to add that as a service, we are committed to helping our storytellers tell the story in the best possible way. No dilution of that vision whatsoever.
Possibly an ignorant question, I confess, because the writers who are tapping away alone in a lonely room, cut off from the world and possibly finish a script. My question to you is that you're talking about series or serials and several, but what is your take on producing and helping writers? First of all, do you make feature films, and are you going to assist, advise, help? What is the process?
So both series and films are forms of entertainment. There is such a mature market of features in this country, and we have a team that's licensing those films for our service. So we don't necessarily need to, or we are not prioritizing developing features at this point of time. We are looking at only developing series right now. Having said that, in future, absolutely. Internationally, we are producing features, but right now in India, our focus is really series. So that's what we're doing.
Back there.
Hi.
Got it, bud.
Yeah. So we get a sense that there is a way to approach you, as in to have a show Bible in place, to have stuff like that in place. But you like to be approached by writers or writer and producer teams, and if it's only writers, do you still pay them and say, yes, we like this stuff, we're going to find you a production company and maybe the rest of the creative team and stuff like that? Or do you want the whole package to be in place, or part of the package, at least the writer-producer, so that then turns into the writer-showrunner? How do you like to be approached, and why?
all combinations work for us. Like I said, we are chasing really compelling good stories, and we are okay with however which way they make entry through our doors. If there's a great writer who comes with a fascinating concept, we are happy to pair him up with a great producer. And if there's a writer-producer team that comes in, that's fine too. The writing needs to be kick-ass.
Hello. So, what about the content which is already done, like not in the early stage of development, but which is already shot and in the rough cut stage, or having a trailer or something like that? How are you taking them in? Like, is there a process we need to go through?
So we have a team that looks at acquiring, licensing content for our service, and you can route it through them.
Is it like we made use of
Start by mailing it to us, we loop them in, and then you can take it forward with them.
Yeah, hi. In the discussion, it came up that the Indian television content is getting regressive, and we cannot blame the broadcasters because it's working. My question is, like, since the VODs are also heavily processed and backed by data, then is there a chance of kind of these contents will get regressive by kind of
I'm just going to quickly jump in. I think that it's important to note that we're a country of so many people, and thus there are varying tastes. And there's YouTube short form content which applies to multiple demographics. There's linear television which is growing at a significant pace, and whatever we might think of it, it's doing quite well in that space. Whereas what an Amazon or what a Vikram's company might be trying to target is a very particular demographic as well. So I think that there's been one type of content that's typically been in linear television. I think what SVOD and these kinds of opportunities really afford audiences as well as creators is the ability to create something different and provide more opportunities. To the extent that linear television sees those opportunities for its audiences or its subscribers, I think we'll start to see some potential shifts in that space as well.
Hello. So apart from web series, is there any space for documentaries in Amazon Prime?
The licensing team is looking at licensing for the service, but we are not at the moment investing in those.
Oh, thank you.
Not right now.
Hi, the development team for Amazon over here. So do you accept projects through email? Is there a particular process, or do you go through only solicited known channels for looking at projects?
We prefer solicited because otherwise we are just inundated with a lot of stuff, and we are very, very easy to approach, really.
Okay.
Yeah.
But through solicited means?
Ideally.
Yes.
Any other questions? Sorry.
So for a Hollywood film to spread really well, like for Fan didn't do well a lot because the villages and stuff didn't take it. It might have done well in Mumbai or Delhi. And so I guess my question is Amazon viewed more in cities? Because when you write, you either want to kind of make something which is the whole of India, including the villages, will take, or you can write for city dwellers. So I'm just wondering, are you more focused on people in the metropolis?
So we are not going to distinguish between people from just metropolis or villagers. We are really looking at, and because we have such a massive retail presence in the country, we have a reach which is far more than what most of us can imagine here. And therefore, the kind of content that we currently have in our pipeline is, is focused on cities. It's focused on small little towns tucked away in this country, villages. As long as the story is great, really. I'm happy to share that our first original, Inside Edge, was watched by people in Jammu, Kashmir, and also Port Blair. So I think it's really cutting across, all demographics.
On the back, over there.
Most of the cases that feature film and other areas are troubled by censorship. So how does it work with WAVE? Is there any, or is it completely self-censored, or you pose certain kind of restrictions? What kind of content will be going there? What kind of language? How much is it? Whether it will be having violence, that much of violence? How does it get, how does it work in WAVE? And secondly, also is there any convergence going to happen? Like in terms of, there are TV channels and there are service providers like Tata Sky, which provides multiple channels together. Like as many of the channels or channels are coming in, would there be in future any service provider providing Netflix, Amazon, and many other channels, and in downstream, like the production houses producing content for them? I'm just asking, curious about the future.
So, second question first. Convergence will happen not just through Windows. Like you mentioned, will there be like a direct-to-home provider that will bring in all platforms? Convergence is happening already through devices. Smartphones, smart TVs are bringing that in. Devices like the Fire Stick on Amazon is getting in all platforms on a plug-and-play basis into your devices. So convergence will happen where the audience is going. We are already seeing this content being distributed seamlessly from phones to tablets to televisions. So that will work on that. In a multi-layered distribution market like India, right, we have the local cable operators, the MSOs, the DTHs of the world. To find one window to service this vast extent of a population will always be a challenge because there are multiple pricing points. One of the reasons of the early success of the OTT players in the West was that you were getting cable at $80 to $90 and you were getting these services at $8. So therefore the conversion to single windows or multiple windows converging into one was easier. Ultimately convergence will happen the way devices will function and the way networks will go. So with 4G and subsequently 5G settling down, all of this will come in. Your first question, if you don't mind just repeating that for us again.
It's about the censorship.
A lot of it is self-censored. I think the platforms, I speak out of my personal experience, are extremely mature on acknowledging areas like violence, language and sex. Globally it's driven by ratings, which you see as bugs when you look at various forms of content. Sure, India has its own challenges and guidelines when it comes to putting such content out. But early days, we're finding a tremendous amount of maturity as storytellers. We're finding a tremendous amount of maturity amongst the platforms to handle this content. Ultimately, what is necessary will go through. What is unnecessary will be censored out by self.
We are very sensitive to the storytellers, and like I mentioned, it's a liberating platform. But we are also very, very cautious and conscious of the law of the land. So sensitive to cultural differences and really want to respect the law of the land.
Great. Anything else? Anyone else? All right. Thank you so much for joining us, and round of applause for my colleagues here, please.